For many viewers who begin their mornings with the calm familiarity of the news, the steady presence of Craig Melvin feels almost effortless, as if the clarity and composure he brings to the screen simply appear with the sunrise. But behind that reassuring presence is a quiet routine, shaped by discipline, reflection, and the understanding that resilience rarely happens by accident. Long before the cameras turn on, Craig begins his day in a way that might seem simple on the surface, but has become essential to how he navigates the emotional weight of modern journalism. The alarm rings while the world is still mostly asleep, and for a moment, the house is silent except for the soft sounds of early morning. In those quiet minutes, Craig has learned to resist the urge to immediately reach for his phone or think about the day's headlines. Instead, he gives himself space to breathe, to gather his thoughts, and to remember that clarity of mind is not something that magically appears when the red studio light switches on. It is something that must be cultivated each day with intention. Over the years, his wife, Lindsay Czarniak, has come to recognize how important those early moments are for him. As a broadcaster herself, Lindsay understands the unusual rhythm of a life lived partly in public view and partly in the quiet spaces between broadcasts. She has watched Craig develop his routine not out of perfectionism, but out of necessity. The stories they cover, stories of triumph, heartbreak, uncertainty, and resilience, have a way of lingering long after the cameras fade. For Craig, the morning routine became a way to steady himself before stepping into that emotional landscape each day. Sometimes it begins with a brief walk while the sky is still turning from dark blue to pale gray, the kind of slow, thoughtful movement that reminds him the world exists beyond studio walls and news cycles. Other mornings, it's a few quiet minutes of reflection at the kitchen table, coffee warming his hands while the house gradually wakes around him. Those moments may seem ordinary, but over time they have become the foundation of something deeper, a daily practice of mental clarity that allows him to meet the unpredictability of live television with patience and perspective. Lindsay often says that resilience is not something Craig talks about as an abstract idea. It's something he lives through small choices repeated every day. She notices it in the way he prepares for broadcasts, reviewing notes carefully, but never losing sight of the human stories behind them. She sees it in the way he listens when someone shares a difficult experience on air, giving space to emotion without letting the conversation become overwhelming. For viewers who have spent decades watching the morning news as part of their own daily routines, that sense of steadiness carries a special meaning. Many of them understand the quiet discipline it takes to begin each day with purpose, especially later in life, when reflection often becomes more important than urgency. Craig has spoken openly about how his understanding of resilience deepened as the years passed. Early in his career, he believed success meant always pushing forward, moving quickly from one story to the next without pausing. But time, experience, and conversations with Lindsay gradually reshaped that perspective. He began to see that mental clarity required pauses, moments when the mind could reset before taking on the next challenge. Those pauses are built into his mornings now. Even as the clock moves toward broadcast time, he holds on to the rhythm he has created. A few minutes of movement, a few moments of quiet reflection, and a deliberate reminder that every story represents real people living real lives. Lindsay believes that this mindset is what allows Craig to connect so naturally with viewers who have followed his work for years. Many of them have written letters describing how the morning show feels like a familiar companion to their own daily routines. Coffee brewing, sunlight creeping through the curtains, and the comforting presence of voices they trust. Craig takes that trust seriously. He knows that clarity of thought helps him deliver information accurately, but emotional clarity helps him deliver it with compassion. The two, he has learned, cannot be separated. There are mornings when the news itself feels heavier than usual, when the headlines reflect uncertainty or loss. On those days, Craig returns even more deliberately to the habits that anchor him. Lindsay sometimes watches from the doorway as he prepares to leave for the studio, noticing the calm determination that has become part of his character. She knows the routine does not eliminate the challenges of his work, but it gives him a way to meet them with steadiness. For audiences in their 60s, people who have lived through decades of change, challenge, and renewal, this message resonates in a deeply personal way. They understand that resilience is rarely dramatic. More often, it appears quietly in daily rituals that create balance and perspective. Craig's mornings are not extraordinary in the sense of grand gestures. Instead, they are built on simple practices repeated with intention, stepping outside for fresh air, taking a moment to gather his thoughts, and remembering the purpose behind his work. When the studio lights finally brighten and the broadcast begins, viewers see the confident host they have come to know. What they may not see is the quiet preparation that made that confidence possible. Yet, in a subtle way, they feel it. The calm tone, the thoughtful pauses, the sense that the person delivering the news understands that every day begins not just with headlines, but with the small decisions that shape how we meet the world. And so, Craig continues his routine each morning, guided by the belief that mental clarity is not a luxury, but a responsibility, one that allows him to face the day's stories with both professionalism and humanity, carrying forward the steady resilience that so many viewers recognize from their own lives.